Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back into one of the strangest corners of modern history, a place where teenagers carried combs, wore denim stiff enough to deflect small caliber bullets, and willingly inhaled glue fumes like it was a personality trait. That's right. We're diving into the shocking glue sniffing epidemic. Among 1960s teenagers, a moment in time somehow more chaotic than your uncle's midlife crisis and your group chat's average Tuesday combined. Before we go any further, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this kind of long-form historical insomnia treatment. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what ungodly hour it is. Now, dim the lights, flip on a fan for that soft white noise breeze to settle into a comfortable position, and maybe pull the blankets up just a little higher. Because tonight we're talking teens, fumes, questionable decision-making, and the era that invented the phrase, "What were they thinking?" But let's pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what actually possessed a generation of teenagers to huff hardware, store adhesive, like it contained the secrets of the universe? Were they bored, rebellious, or simply victims of the world's most aggressively marketed crafting supplies? What did a 1960s teen bedroom smell like? Incense, vinyl records, or the inside of a freshly opened shoe? Did parents notice? Or were they too distracted by Tupperware parties and the Cold War? What did teenagers even do for fun before Wi-Fi, besides apparently inhaling things not meant for inhaling? Could you survive a day in 1960s teenage America armed with nothing but Aquanet, a transistor radio, and decisions you will definitely regret? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1964, lying flat on your back in a bedroom wallpapered with psychedelic flowers, listening to the Beach Boys through a tiny radio speaker, and wondering why the air smells faintly like industrial-strength cement. Good luck. You open your eyes in a room plastered with Beatles posters, lava lamp glow, and carpet thick enough to hide an entire missing wallet. The air is a triple threat aroma of incense, hairspray, and something distinctly adhesive. Welcome home, teen of the 60s. Let's talk about this bedroom, your sanctuary, your stage, and, if we're being honest, a small-scale chemical spill waiting for a documentary crew. You start your day surrounded by history's loudest wallpaper. There are psychedelic daisies on one wall, a tattered peace sign flag tacked up near the ceiling, and not one, but 3 different posters of Paul McCartney staring at you with the same vague disappointment your dad usually reserves for your report card. The bed is a miracle of springy metal and polyester, a platform for existential pondering, private rebellion, and sometimes for staring at the ceiling and watching the shadows ripple from your lava lamp. Lava lamps, by the way, are less of a lamp and more of a gentle warning about fire safety. Each bubble of wax floats serenely upward, a visual representation of your remaining ambition for the day. And the carpet. Oh, the carpet. Shag, lime green, and so deep that small pets and at least one retainer have disappeared without a trace. If you lose something in here, you simply declare it gone and move on. This is the Bermuda Triangle of household flooring. Sensory detail matters. The windows are almost always half closed. Got to keep out the neighbors' prying eyes. And the blinding afternoon Sunday. Your curtains are made from the loudest fabric imaginable, the kind of pattern that induces migraines in adults and daydreams in teenagers. Sunlight glows through the colored swirls, tinting the whole room a shade best described as psychedelic soup. What about the furniture? Your dresser is covered in mystery stickers. Some say make love not war. Some just depict vaguely cosmic shapes, and at least one claims to guarantee a no parents allowed zone, even though your mom enters anyway with laundry, moral outrage, and sometimes a box of cookies she immediately regrets handing over. You've got a desk that's more clutter than wood grain, buried under half-written notes, crumpled comic books, and a collection of empty glue tubes you're not supposed to have. Let's get to the air, that thick, strange, oddly comforting blend. You've got a stick of patchouli incense burning in a chipped mug because you heard it opens your mind and covers the other smells. Those other smells, let's be clear, include a can of hairspray, potent enough to immobilize a small bird, and the persistent undertone of Tester's model cement. That's right. Your bedroom doesn't just look like the inside of a record store, it smells like an arts and crafts fair thrown by mildly delinquent raccoons. Music is a permanent fixture. You've got a stack of vinyl LPs propped against the wall, some carefully chosen for street cred, others inherited from a cousin with questionable taste. Your record player is either the best or the worst thing you own, depending on whether it's currently skipping. The soundtrack to your life includes The Beach Boys, The Who, and at least one song you only play when you're sure no one's listening. What's that sound? It's the unmistakable click of a transistor radio searching for a station. Or maybe your little sister knocking on the door, demanding her lost troll doll back. It's hard to know for sure. Boundaries are a polite suggestion in a 1960s household. You've decorated the room yourself, of course, by which I mean you covered every surface with whatever you could scrounge from record shops, cereal boxes, and that one week you got really into peace sign stencils. The result is a space that feels as much like a statement as it does a shelter. If your walls could talk, they'd probably quote Bob Dylan lyrics and ask you to please open a window. And at the center of it all, you, a 1960s teenager, half awake, navigating a world where the only real privacy is found with headphones on, door shut, and the subtle hope that your parents won't ask why your room smells like a craft store in a thunderstorm. Welcome to your shrine, equal parts fortress, laboratory, and coming-of-age crime scene. Here's where your story begins, one sticky, stylish, spectacularly scented day at a time. Being a teenager in the 1960s is a full-time job. You're moody, dramatic, easily influenced, and your prefrontal cortex is still somewhere in the mail. Mix that with unlimited access to hardware store glue, and you've got yourself a sociological thriller. Let's start with the basics. You wake up every morning in a body that seems determined to betray you. One minute you're feeling invincible, the next you're writing tragic poetry about a sandwich that fell on the kitchen floor. Your emotions are less roller coaster and more unlicensed carnival ride, operated by someone who failed algebra. Everything feels like the end of the world, which makes sense, because at least 3 times a week, it probably is. This is the era before mindfulness apps and therapy podcasts. When things get overwhelming, you do what any 1960s teen would do. Talk to your friends, who are, let's be honest, just as clueless as you. They're a swirling mass of opinions, anxiety, and half-remembered advice from an older cousin who got suspended for organizing a spontaneous sit-in at the mall. Peer pressure isn't subtle, it's relentless. Every decision you make is accompanied by a chorus of voices, none of them particularly wise. Should you try out for the band? Cut your own bangs? Inhale the suspiciously aromatic fumes wafting from your friend's sock drawer? According to your friends, absolutely yes, to all of it, immediately. Your brain, meanwhile, is still under a construction. The scientific explanation is that your frontal lobe, the part responsible for logic, caution, and not eating glue, doesn't fully mature until your mid-20s. The 1960s explanation is, it's just a phase. So you're left juggling the high-wire act of forming your identity while your hormones play musical chairs with your mood. Your crush looks at you, heart palpitations. Your mum finds your secret notebook, existential despair. The principal calls your name over the intercom, cardiac arrest. Then there's the constant sense of comparison. You measure yourself against everyone: friends, celebrities, older siblings, and even that guy in your math class who somehow already has a mustache and a car. It's exhausting. If you fall behind, you're square. If you stand out, you're weird. The goal is to find the sweet spot where you're rebellious enough to be interesting but not so rebellious that you end up grounded or, worse, talked about at dinner, parties. Enter the era's pop culture, always ready to pour fuel on your adolescent fire. Magazine covers feature impossibly cool teens in go-go boots and mod suits, their hair unbothered by wind, humidity, or the existential threat of humidity. Movie stars look twice your age but play high schoolers, teaching you that acne is unacceptable but emotional breakdowns are on brand. Every song on the radio seems to describe your deepest secret or your latest disaster. It's like living in a musical narrated by someone who's read your diary. Add to this the omnipresent temptation of trying new things. It's the 1960s, and everything is an experiment. New music, new clothes, new slang, and, inevitably, new ways to get in trouble. Some of these experiments are harmless, like wearing paisley or starting a garage band. Others? Let's just say glue sniffing was never recommended by the Surgeon General. But when your friends dare you, and you want to prove you're not a square, suddenly you're considering things you swore you'd never do. Welcome to peer pressure, the original influencer. Sometimes the anxiety gets to you. You worry about fitting in, standing out, getting caught, being ignored, growing up, or never growing up. You worry about your future, your past, your hair, and whether or not anyone noticed you tripped over your own bell-bottoms. Spoiler, they did. But they also tripped yesterday. And nobody remembers. And through all of this, adults just don't get it. Your parents are always worried about bad influences. But as far as you can tell, their main hobby is worrying about things they don't understand. They read one magazine article about youth in revolt, and suddenly you're living under martial law. Their advice boils down to, don't be like everyone else, except when you're at church, school, or anywhere people can see you. In the end, your teenage brain is just trying to survive, dodging disaster, seeking approval, and, occasionally, sniffing something it absolutely shouldn't. The good news? Eventually, the wild ride slows down. The bad news? Right now, you're still on it, hanging on by your fingernails, your dignity, and whatever brain cells you haven't yet surrendered to the whims of 1960s peer pressure. You start off innocent, building a model airplane kit. You like the smell. You don't know why. Next thing you know, your hobby has you spending more time leaning over glue tubes than assembling wings. Slippery slope? More like a sticky slope. Let's be clear, this isn't just about planes. It's cars, tanks, battleships, rocket kits, and the occasional Frankenstein monster with a weird grin and too many moving parts. Welcome to the golden age of plastic model culture, where childhood curiosity collided headfirst with industrial-strength adhesives. In theory, it's a wholesome after-school activity. In practice, it's you, in a dim bedroom, hunched over a tray table, gluing plastic to plastic with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. You unwrap the box, a Revell or monogram kit, proudly American, promising hours of constructive entertainment. The parts are molded in blue, red, or military grey. The instructions are printed in 3 languages, all of which you skim before deciding you basically get it. Then comes the glue, that tiny metal tube filled with pungent, clear adhesive that could attach 2 bricks or permanently fuse your fingers into a claw. Here's the thing. The glue is not subtle. It doesn't just smell a little strong. It hits your nostrils like a speeding Buick. a sharp, heady vapor that climbs into your sinuses and invites you to briefly leave reality. You pause, blink, and in that moment, the model kit stops being a toy and starts being a gateway to your very first DIY hallucinogenic experience. And you still haven't finished the left wing. You tell yourself it's just part of the hobby. Everyone smells the glue, you say. That's how glue works. But deep down, you know it's not just about assembling plastic. You're chasing something. A tingle, a brief dissociation from math class, chores, and your mom asking why you keep locking the bedroom door to focus. The hobby becomes a ritual. After school, you drop your books, grab a Coke, and pull out the latest kit, a Mustang P51 maybe, or a cherry red 57 Chevy. You spread newspapers on the floor like a crime scene. You don't really build anymore. You loiter, you hover, you work on details that never seem to progress. The model pieces stay in the box, but the glue tubes? They're emptying at an alarming rate. It's not just you. Across the suburbs, garages and bedrooms become makeshift hangars and workshops filled with the scent of ambition, plastic and chemical fog. Hobby shops thrive. Model kits fly off shelves. Parents think they've found the perfect alternative to rock music and teenage rebellion. At least he's not out. They're doing drugs, they say, unaware their child has just reached enlightenment through a bottle of Testers. And let's talk about the glue itself, model cement, also known as polystyrene solvent, a substance designed to literally melt plastic into other plastic. The warning labels are vague. The caps are loose. And the smell? The smell could drop a cow. No one thinks to question it because this is America. And it's sold next to baseball cards and coloring books. Your friends get involved. One by one, they show up after school under the guise of building models. But no one's building anything. You all sit around a table pretending to assemble cars while secretly wondering if it's possible to get slightly high and still finish the spoiler on a Corvette Stingray. Eventually, someone brings up the idea out loud. Hey, did you ever just sniff the glue? Everyone pretends to be shocked. Then everyone pretends not to try it. Then everyone does it. And just like that, your innocent model building phase has graduated into full-blown olfactory rebellion. The plastic pieces stay in their sprues. The decals wrinkle in the humidity. But you're soaring. Not with your planes, but in your brain. It's quiet, weirdly peaceful, and not at all FDA approved. So congratulations, you didn't mean to get here. You started with a hobby. You ended up in a haze. And while the planes never flew, your sense of judgment definitely did. Straight out the window with the glue cap. Walking into a 1960s hardware store is like walking into a treasure trove of dangerous possibilities. Paints, thinners, solvents, glues, all displayed openly like a buffet for questionable choices. The bell over the door jingles as you step inside, inhaling a heady cocktail of sawdust, motor oil, and industrial-grade decision-making. The fluorescent lights hum overhead. Rows of metal shelving stretch into the distance like the aisles of an enchanted castle. If that castle smelled like WD-40 and old rubber boots, this is not your average store. This is a wonderland of chemical temptation. And you, dear teenager, are about to make some choices. At first, you pretend to browse innocently. Maybe you pick up a hammer, turn a bolt or two with a wrench you definitely don't need, or inspect a bag of nails with the contemplative seriousness of someone planning to build a shed. You are not planning to build a shed. You are here for one thing: glue. Sweet, chemically potent, brain cell displacing glue. And it's everywhere. Shelf after shelf of products labeled model cement, rubber adhesive, contact bond, and mystery solvent that could either fix your chair or erase your memories. The labels are helpfully vague, promising strength, durability, and quick dry results, which, in your case, will apply not to your model airplane, but to your frontal lobe. There are no age limits, no questions asked. The man behind the counter is too busy arguing with a customer about lawnmower spark plugs to notice the group of teens loitering suspiciously in aisle 7. There's no ID required, no policies, no awareness that a 14-year-old carrying 3 tubes of plastic weld might not be headed home to work on a diorama of the Battle of Midway. Let's talk about packaging. In the 1960s, every glue container looks like it was designed by a bored engineer with no concern for safety. You've got squeeze tubes that leak, cans with questionable lids, and glass jars with twist caps that somehow fuse to themselves after one use. The only thing more dangerous than the contents is the delivery system, basically a dare in a tube. You make your selection carefully, not because you're planning a project, but because you're now developing opinions on scent, potency, and how long it takes before the buzzing starts in your ears. You're not sniffing glue, you're curating a collection, a connoisseur of aromatic adhesives, a sniffolier, if you will. Let's not forget the other temptations. The paint aisle, an entire rainbow of possibly flammable choices. The varnish section smells like sweet, chemical ambition. And then there's the cleaning supplies. Ammonia, bleach, turpentine, the holy trinity of definitely don't mix these unless you want to meet God. There's something almost magical about freedom. You're surrounded by grown-up tools, dangerous liquids, and the unshakable feeling that no one really knows what they're doing. It's empowering. It's risky. It's a deeply American experience. You're a teenager, loose in a building full of solvents, and no one is stopping you. What could possibly go wrong? You glance at the exit. Your pockets are heavier than they should be. The clerk gives you a nod. You nod back, trying to look like someone who owns a garage. Outside, the sun is shining. The world is spinning. And in your hand is a bag of bad decisions with a screw-top lid. You didn't mean for it to become a habit. You really did come in the first time just to help your dad find sandpaper. But somewhere between the spray paints and the wood glue, you found something else, a thrill, a high, a ticket to somewhere slightly off the map of reality. So, congratulations. You've just survived the 1960s hardware store, a place where common sense goes to die. And teenagers go to find something stronger than boredom. The shelves are still stocked. The glue is still legal, and your brain cells are, for now, still mostly intact. Mostly. Your friends are a mix of denim, bravado, and boredom. They dare you to try new things because everyone's trying to be cool and no one knows what oxygen deprivation means. Science class failed you. These aren't the kind of friends who remind you to drink water or wear sunscreen. These are the ones who convince you that jumping off a roof into a kiddie pool is a learning experience, and who think "don't be a chicken" is a legally binding contract. You travel in a pack, a flammable, hormonal wolf pack that moves from garage to garage, like a very loud cloud of misguided confidence. Everyone has a role. There's Loud Tommy, who always has a lighter but never has homework. There's Sneaky Julie, who steals her brother's records and mysteriously knows where her parents keep the real glue. There's Dan, who claims he read something in Popular Mechanics once and is therefore qualified to lead this expedition into the land of neurological risk. And there's you, trying desperately to look relaxed while watching someone sniff from a sock and immediately forget what decade it is. No one's trying to be bad. Not really. They're just trying to be cool. Cool is the most powerful force in the 1960s teen ecosystem. It governs speech patterns, clothing choices, and how long you can pretend you're not really into glue before inevitably trying it. Saying no isn't just hard, it's social suicide. You might as well walk into school wearing a sign that says, "Ask me about my stamp collection." Peer pressure isn't subtle. It arrives in layers, jokes, dares, casual shrugs followed by intense stares. Someone pulls out a glue tube. You ask, "Wait, are we really doing this?" They laugh. Relax. It's just glue. It's not like we're robbing a bank, which is technically true. Banks have better security and less access to rubber cement. There's always that one kid who goes first. Holding the tube up like it's an Olympic torch, he takes a deep inhale, his eyes cross slightly, and he leans back like he's just discovered a new element. Then comes the laughter. Nervous, then genuine. You laugh too. Because it's either that or say something responsible, which would immediately get you voted off the island. This is how trends start, not with a mass movement, but with one kid saying, "Trust me," and several others deciding to ignore the internal voice, screaming, "I don't think your lungs are supposed to tingle." By the time the glue hits your nostrils, it's too late to turn back. You're in. Part of the group, a chemically confused legion of denim-clad philosophers who just spent 45 minutes talking about what clouds feel like. And yet, despite the chaos, these are your people, the ones who laugh with you when your eyebrows stick together, who offers you orange soda after your third vision quest, who helps you hide the evidence when your mum knocks on the door and yells, "Why does it smell like a tire fire in there?" There's something comforting about being surrounded by others who are just as confused, curious, and chemically altered as you. You talk big, act fearless, and spend entire afternoons doing things none of you would dare attempt alone, like building a science experiment involving duct tape, a blender, and what you swear was a noble effort to recreate a tornado. Nobody's keeping score. There are no trophies. Just a mutual understanding that these years are weird, rules are optional, and adulthood is a far-off planet you'll worry about later. Right now, your only real fear is running out of snacks or accidentally gluing your hand to your locker. So you keep hanging out, keep pushing limits, keep telling yourself it's just for fun. And in a way, it is a chaotic, mildly toxic bonding ritual that will eventually become the kind of story you tell your own kids, in a very serious voice, followed by, "Don't ever do what I did." And they won't believe you, just like you wouldn't believe your parents. Because that's what peer groups are for. Not wisdom, not caution, but company. Very loud, very loyal company, as you stumble together through the glorious disaster that is being a teenager in 1960s America. Someone hands you the glue. You hesitate for exactly half a second before you inhale deeply like you're about to understand philosophy. Instead, you just understand dizziness and poor decisions. Your first thought, "This smells terrible." Your second thought, "Why is my face buzzing?" And your third, "I probably shouldn't be sitting this close to a lava lamp." But by that point, it's too late. The glue has entered your system like a bouncer walking into a toddler birthday party, uninvited, disruptive, and ready to cause chaos. Let's set the scene. You're in someone's basement, probably Mark's. The lights are dim, the air is thick, and the shag carpet smells like mystery and mildew. Someone's playing a scratchy Jefferson Airplane record, but it might also just be the sound of your blood pressure rising. Your friend, who swears he's done this a bunch of times, hands you a sock. A sock. Inside is a generous smear of model glue. Still fresh. Still sticky. and radiating the kind of odor that makes paint thinner smell like springtime. And yet you lean in, because everyone's watching, because you said you would, because you've already made it this far, and backing out now would mean going back to being the one who chickened out during Spin the Bottle. So you breathe in like you're about to unlock the secrets of the cosmos. What you actually unlock is the sensation of your brain rebooting in real time. The high is immediate, and by high, I mean slightly unhinged confusion. Your head feels like it's floating, your knees forget what bones are, and the edges of reality begin to soften like a VHS tape that's been through the dishwasher. The room spins, the music warps, and suddenly the lava lamp becomes a sentient life form trying to tell you something important about gravity. You nod solemnly. You understand nothing. It's not fun, exactly. It's more like standing up too fast after 8 hours in a hot tub. Your face feels like it's sliding off. You giggle for no reason, then panic because you think everyone else can hear your thoughts. Spoiler: they can't. They're too busy also being internally unraveled by industrial-grade bonding agents. The physical effects hit hard. Your nose burns, your lungs protest, and your stomach files a formal complaint. You feel sweaty, clammy, and strangely hollow, like a human maraca, filled with anxiety. You try to speak but forget how vowels work. You wave your hands in the air, not because it means anything, but because they're still attached, and that feels like a win. At some point, someone says, "Dude, are you okay?" And you nod too enthusiastically. "Totally fine," you say, blinking out of sync. You are not fine. You are the opposite of fine. You are glue high in a room full of teenagers pretending they're in control while actively losing the plot. This is not the enlightenment you were promised. You don't feel cool or rebellious or wise beyond your years. You feel like a malfunctioning puppet with half a brain cell left, and that brain cell is holding a tiny help sign. And yet, nobody stops, because regret wasn't invented yet. You'll process this later, probably during gym class, while trying to do push-ups and wondering why your bones feel like they're made of pudding. But right now, you're in it. You're part of the group. You've sniffed the glue, floated through the haze, and emerged on the other side with your dignity dangling by a single thread. There is no adult supervision, no emergency exit, just the quiet understanding that you've now crossed a line. Not a dramatic one, but the kind of line that gently marks the beginning of a long series of increasingly dumb decisions. Congratulations. You've taken your first sniff. You didn't reach nirvana. You didn't learn the secrets of the universe, but you did learn what it feels like to be legally concussed by fumes that were originally designed to keep airplane wings from falling off. And that, apparently, is part of growing up in the 1960s. Breathe easy, but maybe not too deep next time. Suddenly, everything feels soft, floaty, and not entirely attached to reality. It's like a budget meditation retreat, but with more lightheadedness and no refund policy. You're not quite sure what's happening. 1 second you were sitting on the shag carpet holding a glue-soaked sock and pretending to be curious but cautious. And now you're giggling at the way your friend's face keeps melting into the wallpaper. The room looks bendy. Time has slowed to a crawl, like it's stuck, buffering. You stare at the lava lamp, and it stares back, possibly judging you. You try to look away, but it's glowing with the intense wisdom of a plastic oracle. This is the high everyone was talking about. You thought it would feel exciting, rebellious, maybe even glamorous. Instead, you feel like someone unplugged your brain and is now stirring it gently with a straw. Your limbs are noodles. Your thoughts arrive in fragments. Chair window, where is my skin? It's not painful, not exactly, but there's a distinct sense that something important is being gently vacuumed out of your head, like a librarian is removing entire shelves of useful information. Your home address, the Pythagorean theorem, the last 3 weeks of health class, and replacing them with the sensation of vibrating gently in place. Someone puts on music. Is it the birds, the mamas, and the papas? You're not sure, because the song sounds like it's being played underwater by a confused jazz octopus. You nod along anyway. You think you're dancing, but you might just be listing sideways like a malfunctioning Roomba. Let's talk about your internal monologue. It has left the building. In its place is a strange, echoing voice that keeps repeating things like, "You are glue," and "What if gravity is optional?" At some point you try to stand up, only to forget what up means. You settle for sliding slowly off the couch like a wilted plant. Your friends look equally dazed. One is holding a flashlight and staring into it like it contains all the answers. Another is laughing at nothing, clutching their tapely stomach and repeating the word banana like it's the funniest thing anyone's ever said. You feel bonded, not just emotionally but spiritually, like you've all joined some low-budget mind cult with no doctrine, just fumes and confusion. The euphoria is real, though. That strange, buzzy feeling that you're floating above your own body, unbothered by homework, chores, or the looming spectre of algebra. For a brief moment, it all melts away. School, rules, expectations. There is only now. And now is weird. But it doesn't last. The high begins to fray at the edges. You get a little too warm. Your mouth feels like it's made of sawdust and regret. Your heart races. Your fingers tingle. The floaty calm morphs into something more like mild panic in a fuzzy sweater. You try to sit very still, as if that will convince your molecules to stay attached. Someone says they don't feel good. Someone else agrees. But no one really moves. You're all passengers on the same slow-motion train, headed nowhere in particular. Your brain taps out. Your memory of this moment will later come back in patches. The smell of glue, the sound of laughter, the lingering dread that you may have lost the ability to do long division permanently. Eventually, the fog lifts. You blink a few times. You look around. Everything's the same, but slightly wrong, like someone rearranged the furniture in your brain while you were out. You try to act normal, but your pupils are the size of dinner plates, and you've been staring at your own hand for 7 minutes straight. This is the strange high. Not fun, not terrifying, just odd. A weird, woozy vacation from reality that ends with a headache, a vague sense of shame, and the quiet hope that no adults walk in for at least an hour. Because nothing kills a glue buzz faster than your mum bursting in with a laundry basket and asking why you're all lying on the floor like stunned pigeons. Teenagers become stealth ninjas. They sniff behind gymnasiums, in tree houses, under bleachers, anywhere adults won't look. Adults, unfortunately, never look. Let's start with the school grounds, the universal habitat of the sneaky adolescent. Behind the gym sits a narrow concrete alleyway filled with forgotten basketballs, rusted milk crates, and exactly one functioning light bulb that flickers like a dying firefly. This is prime real estate. It's secluded, shadowy, and smells faintly of old sneakers. The perfect camouflage for a group of teenagers just hanging out. You and your friends form a loose circle, passing around a glue-filled paper bag like it's a sacred chalice. Every time someone hears footsteps, you scatter like startled raccoons, only to regroup 60 seconds later, because raccoons, at least, have survival instincts. Another popular haven is the treehouse at the edge of your friend's backyard. It was built in 1959 by his dad and has not been structurally updated since. The floorboards groan like they're begging for retirement. The ladder is missing several rungs. The whole structure leans slightly to the left, possibly as a warning from gravity itself. But none of that matters. Up here, hidden by leaves and teenage optimism, you feel untouchable. You sit cross-legged on the uneven floor, inhaling fumes while a radio quietly plays whatever station the antenna can catch. Every now and then, a parent sticks their head out the back door and yells, "What are you kids doing up there?" You respond with the classic, "Nothing," which is technically true. You're doing absolutely nothing smart. But the crown jewel of secret hideouts? Under the school bleachers, it's dark, it's dusty, and it smells like despair mixed with Gatorade powder. The metal slats above you echo every footstep, creating a dramatic soundtrack to your terrible life choices. This spot works well because adults rarely bend down. If something rolls under the bleachers, a baseball, a shoe, a small child, they write it off as gone forever. Meanwhile, you and your friends huddle underneath, inhaling glue like you're conducting a séance with industrial fumes. Someone always panics and whispers, "I think the coach saw us," but the coach hasn't paid attention to anything since 1947, so you're safe. Then there are parks, vast, open, lawless parks. In the 1960s, parks are bustling ecosystems of unsupervised youth. There's always a patch of bushes, a forgotten picnic table, or a mysterious hollowed-out tree trunk where privacy blooms. You wander until you find a spot that feels right, which usually means far enough from adults but close enough to sprint back to the main path if something goes wrong. You sit in a circle, passing around the telltale glue tube while simultaneously swatting mosquitoes and pretending that the world isn't spinning slightly off its axis. Closets are also shockingly common hiding zones. Bedroom closets, hall closets, pantries. If it has a door, it becomes a temporary huffing chamber. You and a friend squeeze inside, knees knocking against winter coats and a pile of forgotten board games. The air grows hot and stale. You take turns sniffing glue while the other holds the flashlight. The whole setup feels like a secret laboratory run by two scientists who failed out of science fair. Every now and then you hear footsteps in the hallway and freeze, holding your breath. Which is ironic considering the entire activity depends on inhaling something you shouldn't. Don't forget garages. Garages are adult blind spots. Your dad could walk right past you, holding a lawnmower and a cigar, and never notice the group of kids crouched behind a stack of tires. The smell of gasoline, paint, and motor oil blends so perfectly with glue fumes that you could be actively dissolving your brain cells in front of him, and he'd just shrug and say, "Keep the door open." What ties all these hiding spots together is the illusion of stealth. You truly believe you are invisible, silent, smooth, covert. In reality, you are none of these things. You are a cluster of teenagers high on glue, giggling loudly, leaving evidence everywhere, and smelling like a walking hardware aisle. But adults in the 1960s are juggling Cold War panic, Tupperware parties, and the confusing rise of rock music. They don't have the bandwidth to inspect every shrub, treehouse, or suspiciously quiet closet. So you continue your missions. You sneak, you hide, you inhale. You convince yourselves you are masterminds of subtlety. And maybe, in a chaotic, fumbling, adolescent way you are, after all, you've successfully turned every corner of the neighborhood into a clandestine den of questionable chemistry. And that, for a 1960s teenager, is both an achievement and a cautionary tale. Your style is bold. Thick denim jeans, a leather jacket, and hair held together by enough hairspray to create a minor explosion if exposed to open flame. Safety is not today's priority. Welcome to the teenage fashion scene of the 1960s. A glorious mess of cultural rebellion, clashing textures, and enough synthetic fibers to choke a landfill. You don't just get dressed, you suit up like a warrior entering battle against conformity, parental expectations, and the occasional surprise pop quiz in homeroom. Your closet is your armory, and each item has been carefully chosen to declare, "I don't care what anyone thinks," even though you care more than life itself. Let's start with the jeans. Thick, dark, and so stiff they could probably stand up without you in them. You have to break them in like a wild animal, one that fights back. New jeans chafe, pinch, and cut off circulation. But once they're molded to your body, they become your second skin. They make you feel invincible, stylish, slightly damp at the knees for some reason. Bonus points if they're patched with fabric you cut from your mum's tablecloth or a shirt that used to belong to someone's older brother who totally saw Hendrix live. The leather jacket is your crown jewel. It creaks when you move. It smells like rebellion, motor oil, and the back seat of a '58 Impala. Putting it on makes you feel tougher, even though the toughest thing you've done recently is argue with your dad about curfew. But in that jacket, you're someone, maybe a biker, maybe a rebel, maybe just cold because it's barely insulated and the wind goes right through the sleeves. Doesn't matter, you look fantastic. Now let's talk hair. Hair is serious. For the guys, it's slicked back with so much pomade that if you leaned against a wall, you'd leave a permanent oil slick. It's greased, combed, and sculpted with the precision of a Renaissance statue, assuming Michelangelo was working with axle grease. For the girls, it's teased, sprayed, and elevated into towering structures that defy both gravity and logic. Your bangs could double as a crash barrier. The back combing alone is a full upper body workout. You spend hours in front of the mirror. Not minutes. Hours. Your hair has its own routine, its own laws of physics. You've inhaled enough hairspray to be considered partially flammable. Your comb is always in your pocket. You flip it open dramatically, like a switchblade, every time you feel even slightly insecure. Someone looks at you funny? Comb. You pass a reflective surface? Comb. The wind rustles your hair by a fraction of a millimeter? Comb. It's instinct now. Footwear is important too, for the boys. Boots, scuffed, worn, in, and heavy enough to anchor a small boat. For the girls, flats or clunky heels that make you walk like you're sneaking up on a squirrel. Nobody is comfortable. That's the point. If you're comfortable, you're not trying hard enough. Accessories? Optional, but appreciated. A chain here, a peace sign pendant there, maybe a bandana hanging out of your back pocket. That may or may not have any coded meaning, but looks incredibly mysterious. Belts with studs, patches with slogans, sunglasses worn at inappropriate times of day. Everything is calculated to make a statement. That statement? I have absolutely no idea who I am, but this is a very loud guess. And beneath it all is the glue, not metaphorically, literally. You and your friends have been huffing rubber cement in the garage, and now your jacket smells like rebellion and adhesives. But who's noticing? You're in full fashion armor. You're basically bulletproof. Until gym class. Then you're just sweaty and deeply confused. So yes, your outfit might be one big flammable hazard. Your hair might withstand a Category 5 hurricane, and your jeans might be slowly cutting off blood flow to your lower limbs. But you look cool. Or at least, you look like someone who's doing everything in their power to pretend they're cool. And in 1960s teen culture, that's close enough. Teachers notice something's off. They don't know what, but they can sense it, like a dog seeing a ghost. They chalk it up to teen behavior and go back to drinking terrible coffee. Welcome to the front lines of 1960s adolescent chaos. The American public school classroom. A boxy, beige room filled with flickering fluorescent lights, chalk dust, and at least one flickering overhead projector that's been threatening to catch fire since the Eisenhower administration. The desks are bolted to the floor, the windows barely open, and the clock ticks in slow motion as teachers try, and mostly fail, to wrangle the most volatile substance known to man. A room full of teenagers high on boredom, rebellion, and potentially glue. The teachers are doing their best, which is to say, they're hanging on by a thread. Mr. Carlson, your algebra teacher, has been teaching the same equations for 17 years and has long since given up trying to connect emotionally with students. He delivers every lesson in the same monotone voice, whether he's talking about linear functions or nuclear war. You could be levitating 3 inches off your chair, and he'd just blink slowly and say, "All right, class, open to page 64. Then there's Mrs. Temple, who teaches English and still holds out hope that one of you will understand the deeper meaning of mice and men. You do not. Half the class thinks it's a documentary. She notices your dazed expression during a pop quiz and asks if you're feeling okay. You smile too wide. She sighs and gives you a C+ out of sheer maternal concern. But teachers know. Even if they don't know exactly what's going on, they know something is. The slurred speech, the spontaneous giggles, the vague chemical aroma that clings to your backpack like industrial perfume. They've started calling it the glue thing in the teacher's lounge, which smells like burnt coffee, chalk, and quiet despair. Someone jokes that maybe it's just puberty. Someone else mumbles, "Kids these days." And everyone nods solemnly before returning to grading spelling tests with the enthusiasm of a DMV employee at 4:59 p.m. They'd intervene. They want to intervene. But it's 1964, and there's no official handbook on what to do when half your homeroom smells like a tire fire. There's no training, no hotline, and the school nurse has one ice pack and a vague memory of CPR training from 1958. Besides, most teachers are too underpaid, overwhelmed, and emotionally checked out to confront the sticky, sniffly elephant in the room. It's easier to blame teenage hormones and look the other way. The guidance counselor tries. Sort of. Mr. Dunleavy calls you into his office once after a teacher reports your concerning energy levels. He offers you a half-crushed mint, talks vaguely about healthy outlets, and hands you a pamphlet titled, "Your Brain. Use it or lose it," which you immediately use as a coaster for your root beer. He means well. He also thinks Led Zeppelin is a car. There are exceptions, of course. Miss Brandt, the young, idealistic social studies teacher, once pulls you aside after class. She looks concerned. She uses phrases like altered state and making safe choices. You nod a lot and promise to focus more on your assignments. Then you leave the room and forget the entire conversation within 3 minutes. To the teachers, you're a blur of odd behavior and louder than average hallway conversations. They spot your glossy eyes, your too long stares at bulletin boards, your tendency to laugh during spelling tests. But unless you're actively bursting into flames, they've learned not to ask questions they don't want answers to. So they keep teaching, keep grading, keep sipping instant coffee from mugs that say things like, "Number 1. Teacher while watching you attempt to function with half a brain cell and a locker that smells like low-grade adhesive." They are underpaid, underslept, and underappreciated. And you're just hoping they don't notice the glue stain on your shirt. Or the fact that you accidentally turned in a math test that's actually a doodle of a rocket ship labeled Captain Sniffy's Space Adventure. They'll figure it out eventually. But not today. Today, they just sigh, take another sip of their burnt coffee, and circle the next misspelled answer with a red pen like it's just another Tuesday. Because for them, it is. Teachers notice something's off. They don't know what, but they can sense it. Like a dog seeing a ghost. They chalk it up to teen behavior and go back to drinking terrible coffee. It starts subtly. A few students staring off into space longer than usual. A boy in the third row giggles uncontrollably during a spelling quiz. Someone else raises their hand and asks if the mitochondria ever feels lonely. Mrs. Callahan, who's been teaching health class since Eisenhower was president, narrows her eyes behind her cat-eye glasses. Something is definitely up. But what? Teenagers are naturally weird. Their default setting is confusing and unpredictable. One minute they're doodling spaceships. The next they're emotionally unraveling because someone took the last pudding cup. So when a student walks into class looking like they've just returned from a spiritual retreat inside a bottle of rubber cement, the teachers take a beat and file it under Tuesday. Still, the signs start to stack up. Coach Daniels notices half the basketball team can't finish a layup without pausing mid-court to admire the gym ceiling. Miss Blakely catches a student sniffing an eraser during a book report. And in homeroom, Mr. Harris finds a folded note that just says, "Do not trust the lockers, they breathe." Most educators are too overwhelmed to launch a full-scale investigation. They're underpaid, underappreciated, and hanging on by a chalk-stained thread. Between grading papers, breaking up hallway, brawls over Bee Gees lyrics, and trying to get Jimmy to stop licking the projector screen, there's barely time to ask, is glue the new marijuana? Instead, they try passive-aggressive countermeasures. Miss Blakely switches seats every week, hoping to break up whatever new sniff-happy cult is forming in the back row. Mr. Harris begins using stronger coffee and sarcasm in equal measure. Coach Daniels doubles down on laps until students either sweat out the chemicals or collapse dramatically. It's not an effective strategy, but it gives him something to do besides wonder why the locker room smells like citrus glue and guilt. Eventually, rumors reach the teacher's lounge, that sacred fluorescent-lit bunker where educators gather to eat sad sandwiches and whisper their darkest suspicions. One teacher reports seeing a student spinning slowly in the hallway, whispering the word gravity like it owed him money. Another swears a kid tried to glue himself to enlightenment during shop class. The science teacher, Mr. Powell, attempts to explain the dangers of solvent inhalation. Nobody listens because he also believes Atlantis is under the cafeteria. They finally attempt a formal response. Q. The Great Assembly. Held in the gym, hosted by the assistant principal who hasn't smiled since the Cuban Missile Crisis. A film reel titled Inhalants. The silent danger flickers to life. It features black and white footage of a very sad child frowning at a bottle of glue. A narrator with the emotional range of a toaster intones. Sniffing glue may seem harmless, but it's not. The students do not take this seriously. Someone coughs the word loser during a dramatic pause. Someone else asks if glue can give you superpowers. One kid falls asleep. Two others argue over whether liquid paper counts. The assistant principal gives up and leaves the stage mid-sentence. The gym erupts into applause. After that, the teachers stop trying. They retreat into quiet exasperation, hoping the phase passes before anyone ends up permanently stuck to a desk. They mutter to each other in hallways. They grade papers with a kind of battle fatigue. Some of them even start keeping notes titled Odd Behavior Watch List. Not to punish, just to try and understand. Because deep down, teachers care. They know this is more than glue. It's teenage chaos. It's rebellion wrapped in solvent fumes. It's a cry for meaning from kids who don't yet know they're made of electricity and bad decisions. So they sigh, sip their awful coffee, and try to remember that teaching is mostly about surviving until June, hopefully without having to pry another freshman off the art room floor. And still, every time a kid walks into class with glossy eyes and a suspicious smile, they think the same thing. Here we go again. Bowling alleys, drive-ins, basements. All perfect places to make decisions that would horrify future you. Teenager logic. What's the worst that could happen? The answer, of course, is a lot. But your adolescent brain hasn't gotten the memo. School's out. Your homework is still unopened in your locker, and the world is your playground, or more accurately, your semi-abandoned community center, where at least one light fixture is hanging on by a wire. These are the places where the glue-sniffing saga truly flourishes. Not in classrooms or under watchful eyes, but in the unmonitored corners of your adolescent ecosystem. Take the bowling alley. It's not really about bowling. You might rent shoes, sure, and maybe throw a few frames, just to keep up appearances. But mostly you're there for the neon buzz, the sticky floors, and the vending machine snacks that taste like existential dread and artificial cheese. You and your friends camp out in the farthest lane from adult supervision, pretending to play while secretly swapping glue tubes under the table like you're smuggling state secrets. Someone might bowl a perfect strike while mid-buzz, but more likely, someone throws the ball backwards and blames vibes. Then there's the drive-in, the crown jewel of teenage freedom, a sprawling parking lot of low-suspicion chaos, where no one can really tell what's happening in your car. Are you watching the movie? Sort of. Are you enjoying a wholesome snack and discussing the plot of Creature from the Black Lagoon? Not even slightly. The back seat is your personal lounge, and the glue is hidden in a fast food bag that still smells like fries from 2 nights ago. You've cracked a window for ventilation, which in practice means your car now smells like Elmer's and old onions. Basements. Though basements are the real headquarters, every teen clique has a designated basement, usually belonging to the kid whose parents work late and trust their offspring way too much. It's dimly lit by a flickering fluorescent light that occasionally hums like it's trying to warn you. There's a busted couch no one remembers buying, a record player held together with duct tape, and a suspicious stain that no one investigates. The perfect hideout. In this sacred subterranean space, you gather in a circle, pass around your dubious inhalant of choice, and discuss deep philosophical questions like, do ants have emotions? And what if school is just a government test? It's glue-fueled Socratic dialogue, punctuated by bouts of uncontrollable laughter, and someone asking what day it is. You're not here for structure. You're here for freedom. Or at least, the version of freedom that includes accidentally gluing your hand to a beanbag chair. Supervision is minimal. That's the magic. Parents are upstairs, watching Bonanza, and assuming the muffled thuds are just horseplay. You could be starting a fire down here, and they'd only intervene if the smoke reached the living room. They trust you. That trust is misplaced. Other hotspots include rooftops, dangerous, public parks, sketchy, and the back row of the local roller rink, where gravity, glue, and rental skates combine into a triumvirate of terrible ideas. Wherever there's a blind spot in adult observation, teenagers will find it and immediately make it worse. The unifying feature of these hangouts isn't just their lack of rules, it's the energy, that unique cocktail of freedom, boredom, and invincibility. You're not worried about consequences, you're worried about missing out. Everyone else is doing it, so you have to. There's an unspoken rule that you don't talk about what happens in the hangout. Not because it's cool, but because no one remembers it clearly enough to explain. So you keep showing up. Same time, same place. Armed with a crumpled paper bag, questionable snacks, and enough teenage hubris to convince yourself this is totally normal. And for a while, it is. At least, until someone's little brother walks in, sees the glue-sniffing circle, and loudly announces, "I'm telling Mom." That's when the scramble begins. Glue tubes vanish into couch cushions. Music stops. Everyone suddenly finds themselves very interested in a game of Monopoly they weren't playing 5 minutes ago. Welcome to the after-school hangout, where the supervision is zero, the decision-making is flawed, and the memories are half-formed, slightly fuzzy, and smell like carpet cleaner. The radio plays non-stop bangers, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, the Kinks, and your chemically confused brain interprets each song as personal prophecy. It doesn't matter what the lyrics actually say. In your glue-fogged teenage mind, every song is about you. The universe, you're pretty sure, is communicating directly through FM radio. When the Doors sing "Break On Through," you nod solemnly like a prophet receiving ancient wisdom. Never mind that you just tripped over a coffee table trying to reach a bowl of pretzels. The message is clear. You're on a journey of self-discovery, mild nausea, and someone's mum yelling down the stairs to keep it down in there. The music isn't background noise. It's the main event. You don't just listen to it, you experience it. Every guitar riff feels like it's vibrating in your bones. Every drumbeat rearranges your molecules. You sit there, slack-jawed and wide-eyed, staring at the record player like it's channeling divine energy. Your friends are equally entranced, one of them swaying to the beat like a wind chime in a mild breeze. Another is lying on the floor, whispering. They get me to absolutely no one. And the records, oh, the records, they're stacked like sacred texts next to the stereo. You've got Rubber Soul, Pet Sounds, Disraeli Gears, and that one Jefferson Airplane album that your cousin gave you, and you're still not entirely sure if it's good or just confusing. Doesn't matter. If it has sitars, fuzzy guitars, or sounds like it was recorded inside a lava lamp, it's perfect. The record player is temperamental. The needle skips. The speed sometimes wobbles. But you don't mind. In fact, you're pretty sure that moment where Mick Jagger suddenly sounds like he's singing underwater, that's intentional. That's art. You all nod along as if you understand the deeper meaning, even though none of you could successfully describe what day it is without checking someone's Trapper Keeper. There's something about the 1960s music scene that speaks directly to chemically altered teenagers. It's chaotic, it's poetic, it's dramatic and rebellious and deeply confusing. Just like you, the lyrics don't always make sense, but neither does anything else, so it works out beautifully. You belt along with the Kinks, convinced you too are a dedicated follower of fashion. Despite the fact that your shirt is on backwards and your jeans are glued to your socks, someone eventually brings out a cassette player. Or worse, an 8-track. It's supposed to be cutting edge, but it takes 20 minutes and 3 people to figure out how to make it play something other than commercials for carpet stores. When it finally works, you all cheer like you've unlocked a secret level of reality. And radio? Radio is its own kind of magic. You never know what song's coming next. One moment it's the Byrds, The next, it's a local DJ yelling about a used car sale. And then suddenly, bam, Jimi Hendrix is melting your eardrums with feedback and distorted genius. You all fall silent, awestruck. Someone mumbles, "He's inside my head," and everyone just gets it. Of course, all this musical appreciation is taking place in a room that smells like glue, armpits, and old socks. But that only adds to the experience. It's ambiance. You're not just high, you're cultured. You're part of something bigger, a movement, a vibe, a generation defined by both its taste in music and its total inability to follow warning labels. By the end of the hangout, your brain feels like mashed potatoes, but your heart is full. The music has guided you, lifted you, carried you through the storm of your own terrible decision-making. You don't remember your math homework. You do remember every word of Paint It Black, and you're pretty sure that counts for something. So you flip the record, turn the volume up, sink back into the shag carpet, and let the soundtrack of your bad decisions continue to play. A little scratchy, slightly warped, and absolutely perfect. You wander through a mall filled with neon lights, people smoking indoors, and department stores where no one questions teens looking suspiciously woozy near the model kits. This is your domain now. A carpeted, fluorescent paradise of freedom, commerce, and extremely poor decisions. The 1960s mall is a self-contained city of mild chaos. There's no GPS, no cell phone reception or cell phones, and no adult supervision within a 500-foot radius. You and your friends are turned loose like wolves in bell-bottoms. The mall is everything: escape, hangout, hunting ground, and occasionally a low-effort chemistry lab. Let's start with the scent. It's a swirling cocktail of cigarette smoke, fried food, discount perfume, and the faint plasticky aroma of consumer-grade adhesives. Everyone is smoking. In line, at the soda fountain, in the fitting rooms. Even the mannequins look like they'd light up if given half a chance. You walk past the record store and the air hits you. A blend of patchouli, vinyl, and something that definitely shouldn't be in your lungs. It's all part of the ambience. You pretend to browse, maybe flip through a rack of jackets you'll never afford. The music playing overhead is slightly too loud, slightly off-pitch, and probably a Supremes song. It echoes across the tile floor like the soundtrack to a teen heist movie. You duck into the department store, maybe a Sears or a Montgomery Ward, and make a beeline for the hobby aisle. No one stops you. No one even notices you. The model kits are waiting, stacked in perfect rows. Planes, tanks, muscle cars, monsters. But you're not here for the decals. You're here for the glue, shiny little tubes of temptation displayed openly. Like candy for kids who don't care about oxygen anymore. You pick one up, examine it like you're weighing plastic quality, then casually slip it into your basket. Your friend picks up 3, just to be safe. And here's the kicker. The salespeople don't care. One of them glances over at you with the weary look of someone who gave up policing teen behavior during the Kennedy administration. You could be assembling a nuclear device in the corner, and they'd probably just assume it was a science project. You're not a criminal, you're just a kid who really likes building tiny battleships, right? Next stop. The food court. Or, as it might be more accurately called, the deep-fried lounge of eternal regret. You collapse into a booth next to your equally dazed comrades, surrounded by empty fry, baskets and cups of cola so flat they're legally puddles. You try to make conversation, but someone's too busy tracing their finger around the rim of their cup, like it's revealing the secrets of the universe. Another kid just stares at a pretzel like he's forgotten what food is for. You wander to the arcade, not to play anything. That would require coordination. You just watch the lights blink. Listen to the clunky bleeps and bloops of Space Command and Claw Grabber. And try not to lean too hard on the walls, in case you slide down them like a cartoon character. The arcade is loud enough to muffle your nervous laughter and dark enough to hide your glue-glazed expression. Perfect. Someone suggests going to the photo booth. You all cram in, faces too close, eyes too wide, trying not to blink as the flash burns your retinas. The strip of photos that prints out is a horror show, blurry, cross-eyed, and oddly damp from someone's soda accident. You treasure it anyway. The mall continues around you, a carousel of chaos and commerce. You pass a pet store with puppies that definitely should not be next to a candle kiosk. A woman in a beehive hairdo argues about coupons. Somewhere, someone's playing a harmonica in a corner for no reason. But you? You've got your glue, you've got your crew, and you've got another hour before anyone expects you home. The mall, with all its retail reverence and linoleum glory, has once again delivered. It's not just a shopping center, it's your cathedral, your proving ground, your weirdly scented temple of adolescent freedom, where the floors are sticky, the lighting is aggressive, and no one questions a bunch of kids who smell like hardware stores and existential dread. Ah, the 1960s mall, where you find yourself, lose a few brain cells, and walk out with a bag full of plastic planes and a head full of questionable life choices. Teen rebellion is practically a sport. Everything is about freedom. Freedom from rules, freedom from parents, freedom from oxygen-rich decision-making environments. Welcome to the cultural soup of the 1960s, where every teen is one pair of bell-bottoms away from staging a revolution in their backyard. You're not just going through puberty, you're going through a movement, and that movement is vaguely defined, poorly organized, and primarily fueled by loud music, loud opinions, and a suspicious amount of flammable adhesives. You're no longer content to sit quietly, do your homework, and be thankful for meatloaf. You want freedom, but not the practical kind, like paying bills or managing time. No, you want conceptual, vague, philosophical freedom. The kind that sounds profound when you say it out loud, even though you still need your mom to drive you to the record store. The slogans are everywhere. Turn on, tune in, drop out. Make love, not war. Ban the bomb. Honk if you love glue. Okay, maybe not that last one. But the spirit of rebellion is thick in the air, and you're breathing it in alongside secondhand smoke and the occasional whiff of model cement. You've got posters of Che Guevara in your room, even though you're not entirely sure who he is. You wear peace signs and fringe jackets while still arguing with your little sister about whose turn it is to feed the dog. You attend local protests mainly because someone told you there'd be music and possibly snacks. You're not a poser, you're just very new at this. The authority figures in your life? They don't get it. They call your genes ridiculous, your hair a fire hazard, and your opinions dangerously uninformed. But you like that. That's the whole point. Rebellion only works if it annoys the people in charge. It's not about being right. It's about being loud. And in this stew of social upheaval, where every adult is vaguely terrified that you're part of the youth problem, you find new ways to express your individuality. Some kids turn to poetry. Some take up guitar. You sniff glue behind the laundromat and then tell people you're exploring altered states of consciousness. Let's be honest. Most of your rebellion is symbolic. You storm out of the house over a curfew disagreement and then call from a payphone 20 minutes later to ask for a ride. You insist on doing things your way. But you're still wearing socks your grandma bought you. You quote Bob Dylan but pronounce it Dill Lawn. Still, the vibe is real. You feel it at the record store, flipping through vinyls with cover art that looks like a psychedelic fever dream. You feel it at school, glaring at teachers while pretending to read Catcher in the Rye. You feel it in every basement hangout, every late-night diner stop, every time someone says, "The system is broken," and you nod solemnly even though you just failed a science quiz about photosynthesis. There's a strange unity in the chaos. You and your friends may not agree on everything, or anything, but you're united by the belief that things need to change. What? Exactly? Unclear, but definitely something. Maybe dress codes, maybe war, maybe cafeteria food. All of it. The counterculture gives you a sense of belonging, even as it encourages you to reject everything around you. You're carving out an identity, one protest poster and contraband glue tube at a time. You're not just rebelling, you're discovering who you are, or who you think you are, or who you'll cringe about becoming when you look back in 20 years. So you press play on the latest anti-establishment anthem. You write a poem in your notebook that you'll never let anyone read, and you whisper power to the people under your breath as you crawl out the basement window to join your friends for another night of freedom, fumes, and philosophically vague anarchy. Because in the 1960s, rebellion isn't just expected, it's practically mandatory, even if it smells a little like glue. Eventually, adults notice that half the country's youth is walking around with glazed eyes and suspiciously shiny fingers. Moral panic spreads faster than hairspray fumes. And just like that, the great glue reckoning of the 1960s begins. You wake up one morning, head still fuzzy from last night's experimental modeling session, and suddenly it's everywhere. The radio, the newspapers, the nightly news. Anchormen with overly serious eyebrows are now reporting that American teens have apparently turned their garages into homemade brain-melting labs. The headlines are hysterical. Glue, sniffing epidemic sweeps nation. Are your children high right now? Model planes or mind control? At first, it's kind of exciting. You feel infamous, like a rebel. Like a misunderstood anti-hero in a leather jacket who listens to The Who and probably owns a switchblade comb. Sure, you're just a kid in a basement with a bag full of adhesive. But now the adults are talking about you. You've made the front page. You've made CBS. The articles describe your kind with words like menace, crisis, and chemical insurgents. They make it sound like you're plotting to overthrow democracy with Elmers and a paper bag. And while you'd love to be that coordinated, the truth is, you're not even entirely sure where your other shoe is right now. Still, the public outcry is swift and dramatic. Parent groups form coalitions. PTA meetings turn into full-blown interrogations. School assemblies are called, where someone's uncle, who once took a psychology class, gives a 45-minute lecture titled "Just Say No to Glue and Also Satan." You and your friends sit in the back row, trying not to giggle as he says the phrase "rubber cement" with increasing concern. There's a special segment on 60 Minutes. You don't watch it, but your grandma does. She calls your mum immediately afterward and says, "They said the children are hallucinating snakes in gym class." Your mum hangs up the phone, slowly, and starts giving you the look. The one that says, "If I find a single glue stick in your room, I will personally ship you off to military school." Next comes the legislative reaction. Laws are proposed. Stores start locking up the glue behind the counter, right next to the cigarettes and the dangerous art supplies. Suddenly, buying adhesive requires an adult present, a valid reason, and occasionally a soul-searching conversation with a cashier named Doris who's seen some things. Some stores go even further. They replace solvent-based glue with kid-safe versions that smell like sadness and have the bonding power of warm pudding. You try to build a model tank, and the pieces fall apart instantly. You glare at the label, non-toxic. You mutter under your breath. And also non-functional. Parents start checking your breath the way they used to check for bubblegum. Teachers get suspicious when your backpack smells like a hardware aisle. You invent increasingly absurd lies. It's a blank new cologne. I sat next to a glue spill. I'm just really into crafts right now. The panic reaches peak absurdity. A daytime talk show invites a former teen sniffer who now claims glue stole his soul. A cartoon PSA airs between episodes of The Flintstones featuring a talking dog named Safety Sam who warns, "Don't be a fool, drop the glue tool." It becomes a schoolyard meme within 24 hours. And yet, for all the noise, for all the fear, the glue persists. Just underground. Just quieter. The model kits are still there. The basements haven't gone anywhere. And teens are stubborn, creative, and forever looking for a loophole. Still, the spell is broken. You can feel it. It's harder now. Riskier. More grown-ups are watching. The fun has soured into something nervy and tense. You don't laugh as hard. You don't fly quite as high. Because somewhere along the line, you stopped feeling clever and started feeling noticed. Congratulations. You're no longer invisible. You're a headline, a statistic, a cautionary tale in someone's kitchen. The adults have caught on, and now the game has changed. Public service announcements are rolled out featuring men with flat hair and monotone voices explaining why inhaling glue is not ideal for your long-term success. These aren't Hollywood actors or cool rebel scientists. No, these are government men. Square-jawed, beige-suited, emotionally constipated men who talk like they've never actually met a teenager but have read about them. The videos are grainy, the lighting is harsh, and the message is clear. If you sniff glue, you're one tube away from total ruin. One particularly famous PSA opens with a slow zoom on a half-empty high school classroom. Somber piano music plays. A narrator intones, "This is Timmy. Timmy liked model airplanes. Timmy liked glue. Timmy lost his way." Then we cut to a dramatized reenactment of Timmy staring blankly at a lunch tray, while stock footage of lightning flashes behind him. It's the most unintentionally hilarious piece of government cinema since the duck and cover turtle taught kids how to survive nuclear annihilation with a blanket. But to the bureaucrats of the day, this is urgent action. The Department of Health scrambles to release reports with titles like Solvents and You, a guide to safe teen decision making, which is ironic, considering these are the same people who previously approved asbestos gym mats and mercury thermometers as fine. Still, they mean well. Kind of. Government pamphlets flood schools. Teachers hand them out like Halloween candy. They're filled with diagrams of brains, lists of symptoms, and cartoon illustrations of what happens when you sniff. One features a glue bottle angrily shaking its finger at a group of teens, while a nearby squirrel watches with judgmental eyes. These materials aim to scare you straight. Instead, they become collector's items. You and your friends hang them on your walls, ironically, next to your Beatles posters and lava lamp. Congress, not wanting to miss the panic train, holds hearings. Mostly, this consists of out-of-touch senators asking scientists things like, can glue be classified as a gateway to communism? And is it true that glue sniffers are more likely to listen to rock music? Scientists try to explain the chemical effects of toluene on developing brains, but the senators are too distracted by their own horror at long hair and electric guitars. Laws begin to shift. Some states propose restrictions on who can buy adhesives. One bill suggests all glue purchases be logged in a national registry. Another proposes a warning label featuring a frowning eagle. Most of these don't pass, but the intent is clear. The government wants in on this glue problem, whether they understand it or not. The White House gets involved too. A special task force is formed, complete with a badge, a title, and zero actual strategy. Their goal? Raise awareness and reduce huffing. Their methods? Largely unclear. Their legacy? A few hastily printed posters in train stations, and a now infamous educational cartoon called Sniffy and the Danger Zone, in which a singing blob of glue tries to lure children into a psychedelic void. It lasts one episode before getting pulled for unintended side effects. And of course, school assemblies become the front lines of this campaign. Once a month, you're herded into the cafeteria to watch a slideshow titled "Don't Let Solvents Solve Your Problems." A man in khakis and a comb-over walks you through bullet points while slides click loudly behind him. You sit there, half listening, drawing mushrooms on your notebook. The entire room smells like mop water and disinterest. None of this really works. At least, not at first. Because here's the thing. You can't shame a teenager into clarity using a man named Don in a short-sleeved button-up who's never met anyone under 30. The message might be valid, but the delivery? Absolutely not. Still, the warnings begin to seep in, not because of the PSAs, or the government brochures, or the frowning eagles, but because one day, someone you know sniffs a little too hard, laughs a little too loud, and ends up passed out behind the AV Club's reel-to-reel projector. Suddenly, it's less funny, less cool, more real. The government's response might be clumsy, out of touch, and accidentally hilarious, but it plants the seed. And for the first time you wonder, wait, am I the cautionary tale? Then someone puts on the doors, and the moment passes. For now, your school corrals everyone into the gym for a lecture delivered by someone who looks like they haven't smiled since 1951. They show a graphic film reel from the Department of Don't Do That. You and hundreds of other teens file in, herded like moody livestock, under flickering fluorescent lights. It smells like floor wax, gym socks, and teenage regret. Folding chairs squeak. Someone's already fake coughing to get a laugh. A teacher yells, quiet down into a microphone that echoes in a way that ensures no one will ever quiet down. This is it. The anti-glue assembly, a sacred tradition in 1960s public school fear-mongering, and you've got front row seats. The speaker is introduced with all the excitement of a root canal. He's from a vague government agency or maybe a concerned parents' committee. He's wearing a beige suit, thick-rimmed glasses, and an expression that says he hasn't felt joy since Eisenhower left office. His voice is dry, his tone is grim, and his PowerPoint, if it existed, would be titled, "So You've Decided to Destroy Your Future with Adhesives." He starts by saying something like, "I'm not here to scare you, but which is the universal signal that you're about to be deeply scared." Then comes the film reel, the centerpiece of the event. The lights dim, the projector clicks on. It rattles and hums like an old washing machine. And, suddenly, black and white horror fills the screen. The film is grainy, shaky, and narrated by a man who sounds like he's doing a noir detective monologue about glue sniffing. You see teens stumbling through alleys, teens with vacant stares, teens being carted away on gurneys while dramatic violins shriek in the background. At one point, a boy huffs from a bag and immediately collapses onto a linoleum floor in slow motion, like a tragic ballet of bad decision-making. You glance sideways at your friends. Some are smirking. Some are trying to stifle laughter. One kid in the back whispers, That's Jimmy from homeroom, and gets shushed by a vice principal who's spent the entire assembly squinting suspiciously at the audience like someone's about to huff glue mid-presentation. After the film ends, the speaker launches into a sermon about choices. He paces a little. He squints into the crowd. He uses phrases like life trajectory, irreversible damage. And do you want to end up like that boy on the floor? You're not sure what's more unsettling, the film or the fact that this man says sniffing solvents with such unbroken eye contact. Then comes the Q&A portion, which is less a genuine exchange of ideas and more of a hostage situation. No one asks questions because no one wants to be the kid who engages. Someone raises their hand ironically and asks, "What if it's glue that smells good?" The room erupts in laughter. The speaker frowns so hard his forehead could cut glass. They pass out pamphlets afterward. Thin, pastel-colored booklets with titles like Your Brain on Toxins and Better Highs Through Healthy Habits. You tuck yours into your backpack, where it will spend the rest of its life buried under loose-leaf paper and a crumpled Pop-Tarts wrapper. Eventually, the lights come back on. The chairs scrape loudly. The gym returns to its usual ambience of sweaty echo chamber chaos. You file out slowly, half watching your own feet, half watching the teachers who are now on high alert sniff patrol. Did the assembly work? That depends. You're rattled, sure. You might wait a day or two before hanging out in the basement again. But the message? The message was delivered with such stiff, sterile formality that it barely made it through your glue-addled force field of sarcasm and teenage invincibility. Still, a seed is planted. You start to think, maybe there's more to this than just a dumb dare and a laugh. Maybe there are consequences beyond getting glue on your jeans and hallucinating that your dog can talk. Or maybe you're just really tired of watching outdated film reels with haunted narrators and health teachers who smell like black coffee and chalk dust. Either way, you survived the assembly. You'll joke about it tomorrow in the cafeteria. You'll imitate the dramatic voiceovers and wonder how they found that much footage of teens fainting in alleys. And if nothing else, you'll never look at a tube of model glue the same way again. Your mum lectures you about dangerous fumes while smoking a cigarette in the kitchen next to an open can of paint thinner. Irony has entered the chat. Welcome to the great parent freakout of 1966. News reports are blaring, schools are panicking, and now your parents have decided it's their turn to intervene. Never mind that the house smells like a combination of menthols, gasoline, and industrial-grade furniture polish. Never mind that your dad once cleaned the bathtub with turpentine while eating a ham sandwich. The point is, you are being unsafe, and they are here to restore order. It begins subtly. You come home from school one day to find your room has been reorganized. Translation: everything smells like lemon, scented bleach. Your model airplane collection is gone, and your glue stash has mysteriously vanished. Your mum says she found it while vacuuming. A claim that raises several red flags since the vacuum hasn't been seen in active duty since the Kennedy administration. She sits you down for the talk. Not that talk. That one happened last year and ended with both of you pretending it never happened. No. This is the glue talk. She's visibly distressed, holding a coffee cup in one hand and a Virginia Slim in the other. She looks at you with a mix of concern, disappointment, and an unspoken question. Where did I go wrong? She says things like, "We didn't have these problems when I was your age," which is categorically untrue. Her generation once licked radium off watch dials. She also says, "You're throwing your life away," which feels a bit dramatic considering you're 14, and your most pressing commitment is a book report on Johnny Tremaine. Dad eventually joins in, arms crossed, using his serious voice. He doesn't know much about glue sniffing, but he's against it on principle. He warns you about brain rot and chemical damage, and something about becoming a dropout who lives in a van, even though you've never met anyone who owns a van. He also points to your friend Mark as a bad influence, which is fair, considering Mark once tried to hotwire a toaster. You try to defend yourself, which goes poorly. You say things like, "It's not a big deal, and everyone's doing it, and at least it's not heroin," which turns out to be the wrong angle. Your mum gasps. Your dad storms off, muttering something about the decline of civilization. You're left sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by ashtrays, half-empty cans of varnish, and the haunting echo of disappointment. Later, you overhear your parents talking in the living room. Your mum wonders if you need therapy. Your dad suggests sending you to your uncle's farm to learn discipline. Neither option is appealing. You hide in your room, stare at the ceiling, and wonder how everything got so serious so fast. The next day, a family friend, who once gave a presentation at the Elks Club, drops by with a pamphlet titled Raising Glue-Free Teens, a guide to modern parenting. Your parents thank him. You retreat into the basement and consider building a blanket fort until college. Over the following weeks, your household becomes a weird battlefield of suspicion and overcorrection. Your dad suddenly starts monitoring your hobbies. Model kits? Dangerous. Chemistry sets? Out of the question. You suggest stamp collecting, but he thinks it sounds communist. Your mum starts reading parenting books and leaves one open on the kitchen table with a chapter called When Your Child Chooses Glue Over God. Despite all this, they love you. Deeply, fiercely, confusingly. Their lectures are loud because their fear is louder. They don't understand glue sniffing, but they understand that someone is messing with their kid. And they are going to fight it with every can of Lysol and prayer circle they can muster. So, yes, your parents are hypocritical, contradictory, and slightly flammable. But they're also trying. And in a weird way, their over-the-top panic is just another strange love language. Welcome to adolescence in the 1960s, where every teenager is a mystery and every parent is just trying not to screw it up completely. You try to stop, but boredom is powerful, temptation is real, and accessibility is off the charts. Also, replacing glue sniffing with bird watching isn't immediately appealing. At first, you're full of resolve. You've seen the PSAs, survived the school assembly, watched your mom cry into her ashtray. It's enough to make anyone swear off fumes. You wake up one morning, crack open a fresh notebook, and write, Day 1. I'm done sniffing glue. You underline it twice for emphasis, like that's going to keep your cravings at bay. By noon, you're bored. Not just bored, existentially bored. The kind of boredom that sits on your chest and taps its foot loudly. You try to distract yourself. You pick up a comic book, but the panels aren't as funny when you're fully oxygenated. You turn on the radio, but suddenly the lyrics sound less like prophetic wisdom and more like a man yelling nonsense over a harmonica solo. You walk in circles, stare out the window, sigh dramatically. Nothing hits quite the same. You try to replace the habit. Healthy substitutions, right? That's what the pamphlets say. Engage in wholesome activities. So you attempt bird watching. You sit in the backyard with binoculars and wait. A sparrow lands on the fence. You watch it for 17 seconds. It leaves. You sigh again. You consider sniffing the binoculars. Then comes the peer pressure. Oh yes. The circle of bad influence. Your friends are still sniffing, still laughing, still gathering in garages and under bleachers like secret societies of solvent-based brotherhood. They try to be supportive. Kind of. Good for you, man, one says. Quitting is cool. Then, 5 minutes later, you sure? Just one whiff. For old time's sake? You decline. You mean it. But your resolve wobbles. There, all giggling like banshees, listening to Hendrix and eating Fruit Loops dry from the box. And here you are drinking tap water and trying to feel something. You make it 2 days. On day 3, you're reorganizing your desk when you find a forgotten glue stick in a drawer. Your heart does a little somersault. You stare at it like it's an old flame who just walked into your high school reunion. No, you tell yourself. You're done. You pick it up. Turn it over in your hand. It's a little crusty. Still smells nostalgic. You put it down. Then you pick it back up. Then you put it down again. This is what quitting looks like. Not dramatic or heroic. Just weirdly sweaty and full of silent arguments with office supplies. Your parents notice your mood. Are you okay? They ask. You nod. They ask again. You say yes through gritted teeth while internally screaming at a bottle of model glue that now lives in your sock drawer like a shameful pet. You try journaling. You write things like, I am stronger than this, and I will not be defeated by crafts. But it doesn't stick. Because deep down, you're not just craving glue. You're craving the feeling that came with it. The buzz, the thrill, the camaraderie, the illusion that you were doing something cool, rebellious, interesting. Without it, you feel regular. And regular is hard. Eventually, you slip. 1 whiff becomes 3. You don't spiral exactly, but you backslide. And it sucks. Not just because of the glue, but because you wanted to be better. You meant to be better. And that gap between your intentions and your actions, that's the worst part. But here's the thing. You keep trying. You mess up, but you try again, and again. And eventually, something changes. Not overnight. Not with a triumphant music cue and a slow zoom, but slowly, quietly. You go longer between relapses. You find distractions that almost work, sketching, biking, writing poems that you'll never show anyone. You don't even like bird watching yet, but you've started naming them. There's a robin you call Larry. He seems trustworthy. Quitting is boring, messy, unglamorous. It's also brave. And while you're still figuring it out, you've made it through today. Maybe that's enough. Tomorrow, you try again. Stores start locking up adhesives like precious metals. Teens adapt instantly by finding other questionable things to inhale. Innovation was a mistake. The suburbs have spoken, and they are not having it. After months of headlines, PSAs, and the occasional collapse of a chemically adventurous 10th grader behind the roller rink, the adults finally mobilize. This is a full-scale suburban counterattack, complete with church bulletin warnings, PTA-sponsored emergency glue panels, and sternly worded letters to local store managers signed in cursive by someone named Carol. Your local hardware store is the first to fall. One day, the model glue is proudly stacked on open shelves like a plastic buffet. The next, it's behind a glass case, locked tighter than a bank vault, right between the spray paint and the rat poison. A faded sign above it now reads, "Must be 18 to purchase." The manager glares at you just for reading it. You try your usual routine, casual stroll down the aisle, pretend to browse bolts, subtle reach for the familiar yellow tube, but it's gone, replaced by shame, suspicion, and a deeply confused cashier named Linda, who now has to verify glue purchases like they're age-restricted government secrets. You regroup with your friends in the parking lot like a band of thwarted outlaws. "We'll find something else," someone says, puffing their chest out like a glue-sniffing Robin Hood. And, in a tragic display of creativity, you do. Enter the era of terrible alternatives. I am. Suddenly, you're experimenting with everything in arm's reach. Nail polish remover, gasoline, magic markers, canned whipped cream. Someone insists you can get high from cooking spray, and you believe them, because at this point, science is just a suggestion. You all become suburban alchemists, mixing household products, lighting candles, and muttering phrases like, "I read it in a magazine," before losing consciousness next to the laundry detergent. A friend claims permanent markers open your third eye. Another swears by rubbing alcohol and Kool-Aid powder, which mostly just gives you a headache and stains your lips purple. Some genius tries to inhale rubber cement through a vacuum hose. He survives, but the hose doesn't. His parents ground him and bill him for the damages. Meanwhile, the adults escalate. They write op-eds, they call radio stations, they hold community inhalant awareness nights in school auditoriums that smell like mildew and popcorn salt. One local dad suggests banning all glues, paints, and solvents completely. "We can just go back to nails," he says proudly. The town carpenter quietly weeps. Then come the random locker checks. The principal strolls through hallways with a clipboard and a very nervous gym teacher searching for contraband. A kid gets suspended for a suspiciously strong-smelling bottle of model airplane sealant. Another gets caught sniffing whiteboard markers during a math quiz and earns a week of detention plus a starring role in the next assembly slideshow. Still, like any good teenage resistance movement, you adapt. You hide your stash in hollowed-out books. You switch from bags to old soda cans. You whisper about new concoctions like it's a secret menu at a questionable diner. You grow more secretive, more experimental, and frankly, more ridiculous. But here's the thing. The thrill fades. After the fifth bad trip involving floor wax and your neighbor's vacuum seal bags, you start to wonder if this is maybe not sustainable. The glue was dumb, yes, but it was classic dumb. This is chaotic dumb, wildcard dumb, dumb with a concussion and a nosebleed. Eventually, someone gets hospitalized for trying to aerosol meditate with paint thinner in a tent. That's when even your most reckless friend, the one who once huffed correction fluid in a moving go-kart, mutters, "Okay, maybe this is getting out of hand." The suburban backlash was swift, messy, and over the top. But like most attempts to halt teen behavior through force and fear, it missed the point. You weren't doing this because glue was delicious. You were doing it because you were bored, restless, and full of weird ideas and unregulated hormones. And now, thanks to locked cabinets and constant adult surveillance, you're still all those things, just slightly more paranoid and significantly worse at chemistry. So the glue is gone, but the chaos? Oh, that's just getting started. By the end of the 60s, glue is out, and other recreational experiments take its place. The era rolls forward, leaving behind a trail of sticky memories. It happens gradually, like all cultural changes. Not with a bang, but with a lazy shrug and a new set of questionable decisions. The teen landscape shifts. The lava lamps still glow. The denim is still bell-bottomed. But the glue? It's collecting dust in a locked cabinet behind the counter at the hardware store, next to the now-forgotten dreams of model aircraft supremacy. You and your friends don't talk about it much. It's not exactly cool anymore. Sniffing glue went from daring to tragic faster than you can say solvent abuse. The same kids who once held full-on inhalant ceremonies in someone's garage now roll their eyes when you mention it. Like, ugh, that was so early 60s. There's a new wave in town, and it's groovier, greener, and smells a little more organic. The psychedelic era is in full bloom. Timothy Leary is on television telling you to turn on, tune in, drop out, and suddenly mushrooms, blotter paper, and something called Mary Jane are the new flavors of rebellion. Even the posters in your bedroom change. The Beatles evolve from mop-haired romantics to LSD-soaked prophets. Your record player swaps Rubber Soul for Sgt. Pepper, and the glue-scented haze of your youth gives way to incense and theories about colors having feelings. Your older cousin gets a lava lamp and starts saying things like, "The government is lying to us," while drawing spirals in his notebook. Someone brings a book by Aldous Huxley to lunch and insists it's deep. You nod. You haven't read it. You're still trying to pass science class after that unfortunate period where you were convinced the mitochondria had a personality. But even as the cultural wave moves on, glue leaves its mark, sometimes literally. Your desk still has that one spot you can't clean off. Your old model kits sit abandoned, some of them permanently fused into cursed geometric shapes. There's a tube of rubber cement in your drawer that you don't touch anymore, but you also don't throw away. It's like a weird trophy. A reminder. Proof that you once lived fast, sniffed, recklessly, and somehow survived. The authorities quietly breathe a sigh of relief. School posters about inhalants are replaced with posters about new dangers. Assemblies now focus on stranger drugs, stranger consequences, and even stranger acronyms. You watch one about grass where a cartoon stoner morphs into a werewolf after listening to jazz. You think about glue and how no one ever made a werewolf film about that. Your parents, for their part, act like it never happened. They've moved on to worrying about rock music, bell-bottoms, and satanic influences in comic books. They'll bring up Vietnam, civil unrest, the state of the economy, but the glue? Never again. It's like a weird blip in their parenting journey they'd prefer to block out with wine spritzers and crossword puzzles. But you remember the sting in your nostrils, the light-headed euphoria, the weird conversations about time being just a suggestion. You remember sitting in a basement, staring at a wall, convinced it was breathing. You remember the laughter, the dizziness, the sharp turn from fun to fuzzy. And maybe, just maybe, you're glad that phase is over. Not because you've become a model citizen, please, you're still failing algebra, but because there's something oddly comforting about moving past your glue-sniffing era, like shedding a cringy nickname or finally retiring your braces. It's a rite of passage. A slightly toxic, deeply embarrassing, very adhesive rite of passage. So, the culture shifts. The teens move on, the glue dries. But the memories? Oh, they're permanent. Like a smear on your favorite poster, or a strange stain in the carpet your mum still asks about. You don't sniff anymore, but you'll always remember the decade you did. You grow older and slightly wiser. You can't remember the capital of Ohio anymore, but you can remember the smell of model glue with unsettling clarity. It hits you sometimes during a quiet moment at the grocery store, or while walking past a hardware aisle that's just a little too nostalgic. That sharp, plasticky tang, the sweet, headache-inducing whiff of your youth. You pause, blink. Suddenly you're 13 again, in someone's basement, trying to act like you totally meant to fall over sideways. It's weird what sticks in your brain. Not algebra, not state capitals, but the sound of a glue tube popping open. The ritualistic shuffle of feet on a shag carpet while someone cues up a Doors record, locked in forever. Your neurons may have sacrificed certain core memories to the gods of solvent exposure, but they made room for that. Now, as an adult, or whatever vague approximation of an adult you've become, you look back on the glue era with a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief. You remember doing it, but can't for the life of you explain why. It was just a phase, you tell people. Teenagers are stupid. You say this while trying to find your car keys, which are currently in your hand. There are gaps, literal ones. Your memory of those years feels like Swiss cheese soaked in mystery. You recall the vibe, the freedom, the rebellion, the chemical haze. But when someone asks, "Hey, what happened at that party in 8th grade?" your answer is usually, "No idea. But I think someone glued their sock to the TV." Some effects are physical. You can't prove it, but you're pretty sure your short-term memory isn't what it used to be. You walk into rooms and forget why. You read the same sentence 3 times before it sinks in. You once spent 10 minutes looking for your glasses while wearing them. Other effects are emotional, more subtle, more complicated. Sometimes you feel an odd flicker of guilt. You think about your parents, desperately trying to understand what the hell you were doing in the garage with a brown paper bag and an unexplainable rash. You think about the lectures, the punishments, the utter confusion in their eyes as they wondered what alien had taken over their child's brain. And then there's the fear, the what-ifs. What if you'd gone further? What if things had gone worse? What if your worst decision had been permanent? It's a quiet sort of terror. The kind that creeps in late at night, just as you're drifting off, whispering, "You really sniffed glue out of a Slurpee cup." But there's also perspective. Time adds a weird sort of grace to even the dumbest choices. You understand now that you weren't evil. You weren't doomed. You were just a teenager with a poorly developed frontal lobe and access to alarming amounts of hardware supplies. You were trying to feel something, escape something, be something, and somehow you made it through. You learned things. You learned that boredom is dangerous, that friends can be both lifelines and enablers, that it's okay to make mistakes, as long as you eventually stop repeating them. You learned that life is a weird, messy experiment, and not the kind that should involve household chemicals and a pillow fort. And so, here you are, grown, functional, mostly. You pay taxes, you hold conversations, you own a smoke detector and know what a deductible is. You also still hum "Paint It Black" when you smell rubber cement. Maybe you don't remember the capital of Ohio anymore. It's Columbus, by the way, you looked it up just now. But you remember enough to know who you were and how far you've come. Enough to laugh at the ridiculousness, to cringe a little, and maybe, just maybe, to be grateful. Because history is weird. Memory is unreliable. And youth? Youth is a glue-scented fever dream, with just enough wisdom left behind to make you a little more careful today. And that's something. Decades later, you look back at your teenage self and wonder how you survived. The answer: luck, youth, and a complete disregard for brain chemistry. It's a strange thing. Adulthood. You sit in your well-ventilated living room, sipping tea that promises calm energy and reading labels like a responsible human. And suddenly, bam! You remember 1967. You, a bag of glue, and a questionable idea disguised as a fun afternoon. Your modern self blinks, confused. Your teenage self grins through a haze of solvent fumes and says, "No regrets, man." Well, maybe a few regrets. Looking back is like flipping through an unedited scrapbook created by a raccoon with a head injury. You see flashes, not full scenes. A friend laughing too hard. Someone passing out mid-sentence. You yourself wandering through a parking lot with no real plan and a melted model plane in your back pocket. None of it makes sense. All of it is, technically, your fault. What were you doing? You were rebelling, obviously. Against what? Unclear. Probably homework. Maybe curfews. Definitely broccoli. There was something intoxicating about doing something wildly dumb that grown-ups told you not to do. It gave you purpose. Direction. A weird, chemical-induced euphoria that made your ceiling fan look like a profound metaphor for society. You were also incredibly bored. The kind of boredom that only existed before the internet. You had time. So much time. And not the productive kind, the feral kind, the kind of time that leads you to rearrange your sock drawer, alphabetize your records, then think, what if I just inhaled a deeply toxic substance for recreational purposes? And back then, it didn't feel insane. It felt normal. Or at least, normal adjacent. Everyone was doing something dumb. Some kids were drag racing. Some were trying to grow sideburns with motor oil. Others joined bands with names like the Purple Noodles and practiced in garages until someone's dad shut off the power. You had glue and a dream. There's also a kind of dark comedy to it now. You, who now panic when you drink coffee after 3 p.m. You, who stretches before unloading the dishwasher. You, who owns a humidifier. Once upon a time, you were chemically flattening your own brain just to make Tuesday feel interesting. Sometimes, you'll try to explain it to younger people. Back in the day, you'll begin, trying to sound wise, we used to sniff glue. And they look at you not impressed, not horrified, just confused. Why, they ask. And you have no real answer. You just shrug and say something like, it was the 60s, as if that magically absolves you of all brain cell-related crimes. But there's something strangely endearing about it all. You weren't evil. You weren't even rebellious in the cool James Dean way. You were just a teenager, doing your best to find something more. More thrill. More meaning. More distraction from algebra. You had no idea what you were doing. And that, somehow, was the entire point. And you survived. Barely. Miraculously. Against all logic and chemistry textbooks. You came out the other side with fewer brain cells, sure, but more stories than your grandchildren will ever believe. You can still hear the music, smell the glue, feel the buzz of fluorescent lights in a too-warm basement where someone was always about to fall over. So now, when you catch yourself forgetting why you walked into the kitchen, or spacing out mid-sentence, or failing miserably at trivia night when someone asks what a mitochondrion does, you just smile. Because, honestly, you know exactly what you were doing back then. You were living, dumbly, recklessly, stubbornly, and somehow, against all odds, you made it. You're still here. And that's enough to make anyone light an incense stick, sit back in a squeaky recliner, and whisper to no one in particular, what a time to be alive. The glue-sniffing epidemic isn't widely talked about now, but it remains a bizarre moment when youth culture, boredom, and industrial adhesives collided in a spectacularly absurd way. It doesn't make the history textbooks. It's not mentioned in your standard 1960s documentaries sandwiched between footage of moon landings and flower crowns. But make no mistake, for a brief brain cell endangering moment, it was very real, very widespread, and very dumb. It began quietly, as all catastrophes do, with a couple of teens hunched over a model airplane kit, casually enjoying the smell of the glue more than the joy of construction. It spiraled from there. What started as a hobby turned into a phenomenon. Across suburbia, thousands of kids were suddenly walking around dazed, disheveled, and slightly glossy-eyed, like they'd just returned from a very disappointing outer space mission. And yet, decades later, when people talk about the 60s, the focus is on Woodstock, protests, counterculture, and Beatles mania. The glue, it's barely a whisper. A cultural shrug, a chapter left out not because it wasn't significant, but because it was, well, embarrassing. Even now, if you bring it up, you'll get mixed reactions. Some will chuckle, others will pretend they don't remember. A few will deny it ever happened, which is rich coming from someone whose high school yearbook photo features suspiciously dilated pupils and a strategically placed hobby kit. There are no national museums of adolescent inhalant experimentation, no monuments to the brave teens who accidentally glued their faces to things. Just stories. Half remembered. Glossed over. Pun intended. But real. The legacy isn't in textbooks, it's in basements, in vintage magazines with ads for Superbond fast-dry adhesive, right next to a teenager giving the camera a look that screams I made choices. It's in old carpet stains no one could ever identify. In a half-full bottle of testers discovered in your parents' attic, sitting quietly like a relic from an ancient and very questionable civilization. And it's in your memories, those woozy, chaotic, oddly sweet fragments that float around your brain like helium balloons you forgot to tie down. You don't recall every detail, but you remember the feeling of being young, stupid, and absolutely convinced you were doing something important. You weren't. But that didn't stop you. You may not have launched a revolution, but you did spend an entire summer convincing your friends that glue opened up the creative pathways of the mind. Then you fell asleep in a laundry basket. Some say the glue era paved the way for broader conversations about substance abuse. Others say it was just a dumb phase that ended when the next wave of recreational stupidity came along. Mushrooms, acid, polyester, all valid, all equally absurd. But the glue years were special in their own weird way, because they didn't belong to any larger movement. They weren't ideological, they weren't political. They were just a bizarre intersection of unsupervised teens, readily available chemicals, and the incredible power of peer pressure. A perfect storm of idiocy. And yet there's something almost comforting about it now. Not the brain damage part, obviously, but the reminder that every generation does something monumentally stupid. It's tradition. It's part of growing up. Your parents had their own disasters, so did their parents. And someday, you'll watch your own kids do something equally baffling and think, well, at least it's not glue. So yes, the glue-sniffing epidemic is a strange, sticky footnote in the great saga of teenage rebellion. It didn't last. It didn't change the world. But it happened. It was real. And it left behind more than just an odd chemical smell. It left a legacy of caution, of hindsight, of knowing that, sometimes, the dumbest chapters are the ones that teach you the most. Even if all they really teach you is, don't inhale things designed to keep plastic dinosaurs together. And for what it's worth, that's not a bad lesson to learn. Left unsupervised, you and your friends decide to invent something cool with whatever you find under the sink and in the garage. Somehow, this leads to mixing glue, nail polish, remover, and lemon Kool-Aid in an old jar, then daring each other to sniff it. Congratulations, you've reinvented disaster and possibly invented a new state of matter. It all begins with a brilliant idea, or what feels like a brilliant idea. Because you're 13, bored, and convinced you're one beaker away from a Nobel Prize. You and your friends are in someone's garage, or maybe the basement, a sacred temple of forgotten lawn equipment, empty paint cans, and mystery fumes. This is your lab, your headquarters, your domain. The mission: create something cool. Cool is not defined. Could be an invention, could be a potion, could be a homemade rocket ship powered by sadness and pine-scented bleach. The important thing is that it smells strong and makes your nose itch. You start gathering materials like a raccoon with a clipboard. Glue? Obviously. You're no amateur. Nail polish remover? Sure. It's got that eye-watering zest that screams science. Lemon Kool-Aid? Why not? You're going for a citrus-forward aroma. Bonus. It stains your fingers neon yellow, which somehow feels like a win. Into the jar it all goes. Stirred with a screwdriver, sealed tightly, shaken vigorously to activate the molecules. One kid suggests heating it up. You decide that's a little too close to actual arson, so you settle for just naming the mixture something ominous like Compound X and daring each other to sniff it. The first inhale is, predictably, horrifying. Your eyes water. Your vision blurs. You stagger backward and fall into a pile of old newspapers that might be flammable, might be sentient. You declare, voice cracking, "That was amazing," which is a lie. But no one wants to be the first to admit they've just injured their entire sinus cavity for no reason. The rest follow suit, because peer pressure is stronger than self-preservation. One kid goes cross-eyed for 10 minutes. Another begins to giggle uncontrollably and invents a new dance called the chemical shuffle. You scribble results in a notebook labeled experimental findings, which mostly contains doodles of skulls and the word dizzy underlined 5 times. This is how suburban mad science works. Equal parts, imagination, household toxins, and a complete absence of adult supervision. Somewhere between curiosity and chemical incident, you achieve a state of chaotic enlightenment. You are both the scientist and the experiment. Schrödinger's teen. Eventually, someone's mom knocks on the door. Panic sets in. You frantically hide the jar behind a stack of old board games and pretend to be discussing homework. She nods suspiciously, mutters something about the garage smelling like turpentine and jello, and leaves you to your studies. You breathe a sigh of relief, followed by another deep sniff of your newly forged mistake. It doesn't get better. It gets worse. But now, it's tradition, a ritual, a bonding experience wrapped in brain fog and poor judgment. You give the concoction a name, something edgy, something mysterious, something like Mind Juice or the Yellow Reaper. You talk about selling it. You draw labels. You plan to market it to cool kids only. These plans dissolve once someone accidentally spills it, and it melts through a shoebox. In the days that follow, you experience a persistent headache and the vague sensation that your ears are ringing in Morse code. You conclude this is probably normal and continue building version 2.0 with added nail glue and Diet Cola. You never tell your parents, not because you're hiding anything, well, okay, yes you are, but mostly because trying to explain it would require saying the words homemade glue cocktail, and that's not a conversation anyone's ready for. And so, your amateur chemistry era continues. Gloriously unhinged, wildly unsafe, the kind of thing only a teenager could survive without becoming permanently phosphorescent. Congratulations! You didn't discover a new element. You discovered something better. How dangerously stupid curiosity can be when left unsupervised. You're not a scientist. You're a legend. a slightly dizzy, lightly stained legend, and science will never be the same. Not everyone gets invited to the inner circle. The cool crowd hoards the best adhesives and only lets you join if you prove yourself with feats of daring stupidity, like sniffing a glue-soaked sock in the middle of gym class. Social climbing has never been stickier or more likely to result in a nosebleed. This isn't just glue sniffing anymore. This is high school politics in its rawest, most chemically questionable form. The cool kids, and by cool, we mean the kids who wear sunglasses indoors and haven't done a math assignment since Kennedy was president, have turned glue access into currency. A bizarre new social hierarchy emerges, and it's based entirely on who has the strongest fumes. These aren't your average Elmer's loyalists. No, these are the connoisseurs, the sommelier of solvent. They trade tips on which brand hits hardest, which tubes are freshest, and which types of glue will open your mind to the third dimension of gymnasium geometry. One kid swears by rubber cement. Another says model airplane glue tastes like rebellion. Someone brings in a glue imported from Canada, which somehow becomes an urban legend in its own right. To get in, you need to prove you're not just another hobbyist with access to office supplies. You need to demonstrate commitment, grit, total disregard for your own well-being. This usually involves some form of public idiocy that, in any sane society, would warrant adult intervention and probably a helmet. Maybe you do a sniff and hold challenge behind the bleachers. Maybe you volunteer to glue your own shoelaces together and sprint across the quad. Maybe, in a moment of desperation and misguided confidence, you agree to sniff an entire sock soaked in adhesives during fourth period dodgeball. You survive, barely, though you mistake a volleyball for your aunt's Buick for the rest of the day. If you pass the test, and don't pass out, you're in. Welcome to the club. Meetings are held in dimly lit corners of the schoolyard, or in someone's garage surrounded by questionable music and an even more questionable beanbag chair. You're given a nickname. Something like Sticky Ricky or the Fume Ranger. It's not flattering, but it means you've made it. Inside the circle, the rules are weirdly strict. There's etiquette. Don't bogart the tube. Don't sniff during serious song lyrics. Don't pass out in someone's mum's laundry basket again. And above all, don't tell outsiders where the good stuff is kept. The exclusivity gives it power. Kids who used to be ignored in math class are now the gatekeepers of the galaxy brain experience. You see them strut down the hallway with swagger, one pant leg rolled up, Walkman blasting the doors, binder full of nothing. They've seen things, glue things, and now they act like they run the school. Of course, this glue-fueled aristocracy doesn't last forever. Power shifts. Popularity is fickle. Eventually, one of the main members gets suspended for trying to sniff correction fluid out of the principal's pen cup. And suddenly the club doesn't seem so cool anymore. Still, for a brief shining moment, they were it, the tastemakers of toxic teen trends, the court jesters of chemistry class. You look back now and wonder, was it really about the glue? Or was it about belonging? Because deep down, everyone just wanted to be part of something. Even if that something was organized around brain fog and mild hallucinations, you didn't want to be left out. You wanted to be seen. And in the 1960s, being seen sometimes meant sniffing like your social life depended on it. So you did it. You played the game. You earned your name. You joined the most absurd club in the history of extracurricular activities. The cool Kids Club membership, one signature away from a trip to the nurse's office. Perks, limited. Regrets, plentiful. Adhesion to reality, questionable. So here you are, drifting back from the psychedelic haze of 1960s suburbia, leaving behind the echo of the Kinks on the radio, a room forever tainted with the faint aroma of model glue, and a memory of choices that, in retrospect, seem about as logical as using a toaster in the bathtub. Tonight, as you settle into the gentle comfort of a clean, well-ventilated bedroom, a room blessedly free from glue fumes, mystery stains, or the existential terror of a surprise school assembly, take a moment to marvel at just how far we've come. No matter how bad your day was, at least you didn't have to choose between boredom and brain cell evaporation by hardware store solvent. Think about it. You have the luxury of sleeping on an actual mattress, with sheets that don't double as chemistry experiments, drinking water that won't give you that special feeling, and browsing the internet for hours without ever wondering if someone's going to bust in and confiscate your glue stick. Your parents might have had to listen to hours of safety lectures, but you get algorithm-curated reminders that, frankly, are much less scary and far more skippable. And let's spare a moment of compassion for the teens of the 1960s. They survived a world with rotary phones, 4 TV channels, and a powerful desire to rebel against anything, even common sense. They lived through school assemblies, government PSAs, and the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, inhaling adhesives was a questionable choice. And yet, they persisted, grew up, and somehow became the same adults who now complain about teenagers inhaling TikToks. History is weird. People are weirder. And no matter how odd it gets, every generation manages to stumble through, learning, adapting, and leaving behind a trail of head-scratching decisions and slightly alarming anecdotes. So tonight, as you sink into your pillow and let sleep pull you gently away, whisper a quiet thank you to the universe for non-toxic hobbies, functioning neurons, and the hard-earned wisdom that not everything that smells strong should be inhaled. Because history may be sticky, confusing, and occasionally hazardous to your health, but it's also proof that people are stubborn, resilient, and always just a little bit ridiculous. Sleep well, be grateful, and dream sweetly, preferably somewhere far away from the hardware aisle. Good night.